Welcome to Conversations with Educators, where we bring educators from across the country to talk about topics like college and career readiness, graduation tracking, teacher growth, assessment coordination, and more. Let's get started. Okay, it is 11:01, and if you have joined us for these events before, you know the 30 minutes goes quickly, and I want to make sure we give all the time we can to this amazing panel that we have before us. Thank you for joining us in our webinar series, Conversations with Educators, Testing Season SOS, a live Q&A with K-12 testing experts. And so just to quickly talk about what we will do. I will clearly introduce our guest speakers, and really, this is one of the first times we have designed something as a true Q&A. We want to hear your questions. We have a few that, I've developed as well, just to, if we want to kind of get the ball rolling that way, but you ask the questions. The chat should be enabled for everyone to put things in the chat. The Q&A aspect is also available, but we would love just to hear all of your thoughts and questions as we have this most amazing panel with us. I will share, this is also one of the first times we have been able to bring several states that are not only using TestHound, but users together, but also just a wealth of knowledge in Texas, Florida, Arkansas, and Tennessee. So you'll see our panel. Nikki Yansky, who is in Spring Branch ISD in Texas, Kelly Langan, Springdale, Arkansas, Jamie Skevington, Clarksville, Montgomery, Joanna Sorrells in Plano, Texas, and Teresa Ware in Florida, in their titles, but they all have definite hands in everything that has to do with testing in their district. So I am going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so that we can all see each other's faces a little bit better. And I will I'm going to throw the first question out there. Okay. And then everyone else, please, as you're listening to them speak, put your questions in the chat, put it in the Q&A, and we will get it to them. So, my first question for you all is, what are you doing right now to prepare for, we've been testing all year long. We all know that testing is not exactly just a spring thing anymore. It's all year long for everyone. And you've been doing a lot of work up to this point, but that the biggest windows, the most amounts of students that are testing is happening very soon. So as you've gotten through the fall and the things you've already done, what are you doing right now to prepare for these big spring testing windows? And we'll just let you unmute and whoever go for it.
All right. Well, this is Teresa from Florida. We're one of those lucky states that have the 3 times a year testing. So gearing up for the next administration in the spring, I am going through and doing cleanup to my test management platform, getting kids out of there that are no longer with us, adding new ones, making sure that they are getting the correct test assigned to them, accommodations. And then later this week, we're training our school coordinator. So a lot going on our way.
So I'm Jamie from Tennessee. We've been working on accommodations probably for the last month or so, just making sure we're getting those cleaned up like Teresa. But then at the school level, we have a benchmark. The benchmark window is this week and next week. Our schools have been conducting those to mock the TN Ready or the TCAP test, so that we can see how it's all going to work. And then at the district level, what we've been doing to help our building testing coordinators is we've been hosting open labs. We have those scheduled from now until the beginning of April, so that our building testing coordinators can come to district office to have a quiet place to work, because we know those radios and phones never stop. And so we provide that time for them. And then they have access to myself to help with accommodations, and our district testing coordinator and our accountability and assessment team for any questions they have to help prepare for the upcoming testing season.
We have a lot of weird nuances going on. In Arkansas, we are coming up with a new ESSA calculation formula. So it's a little up in the air as to what is going to be included in the new formula. So like today, we're doing ACT testing. We've got work keys coming back around for the spring administration, not to mention the spring summative testing that everyone's doing that we're keeping track of. So in our office, what we're doing is just trying to narrow it down to who needs to test, what tests they need to take, so we can feed that to the building test coordinators and make sure they have all that in line. We got all of training done to the building testing coordinators. Now they have to go out and do the teachers and the training in their buildings, and they're worried about having enough rooms for accommodated testers and all that stuff. So we're doing just whatever we can to support them if they need to do one in the building, to help another set of eyes to make sure all the accommodations are right, or whatever we can do.
Nikki or Joanna, you want to speak from the Texas perspective?
Yeah, well, Joanna figures out her sound issues, mic issues. So here in Texas, we just started our TELPAS, our language proficiency assessment, opened last week. And so our campuses are in the midst of that, but specifically in Spring Branch, we are also doing our mock of STAR that will take place in April. And so really the big push in our district right now is to use TestHound and use the room accommodations forms and use that almost as a tracking type thing to, one, make sure that our kiddos are receiving what they're supposed to receiving, that everything's syncing up between our special programs system and TestHound. But secondly, that if we've been putting things in ARD paperwork, 504 paperwork, et cetera, that it's actually routinely being used. And so it's just another documentation piece for our teachers to indicate who's using what during their testing, because that's been a really big push in the district for the last couple of years. And so really everybody's just, for us testing people, we have entered our season. And so specifically in Spring Branch right now, we're TELPASing over 11,000 kiddos, and then we're practice STAR testing everybody else. And so we're just moving and grooving. Like I said, checking on accommodations is probably the biggest piece right now, so that we are really and truly ready when we get to April 15th.
Okay, well, this is awesome. So we already have our first question. And again, y'all feel free to bounce off. I'm a new DTC and the accommodation mapping is a mess. I'm considering wiping the accommodations clean and starting over with the accommodations pulling from Success Ed. Have you ever done this before? Any suggestions or on advice on keeping that clean map, right? And keeping it rolling and pushing that out to your campuses so they're ready for the spring?
I'm going to jump in. I have lots
Do it.
and lots and lots and lots of things to say about this.
Good.
So first, yes, I have done a full wipe in TestHound. I've done it multiple times, actually. Even as most recently as a couple of weeks ago, we did a full wipe again. Campuses like to put accommodations in TestHound manually. So my big worry and stress always is, have they input something that's not actually in paperwork, and we're trying to make sure that everything is aligned and correct. So I did a big wipe before we got ready. Like I said, we just started our practice STAR. So I did a big wipe a couple of weeks ago. As far as the mapping and the cleanup, probably the best advice I have, and it can be a beast, is I worked extremely, extremely close with our special programs department, and we went through and we really streamlined what's in Success Ed for our ARD facilitators and 504 coordinators and LPAC administrators, because we use Success Ed for all of it, to streamline and have it consistent across the board, so that you wouldn't see oral administration per student request, but then over in a different section, oral administration and nothing else. We really tried to streamline it so that it was very, very consistent. And as things pop up in our file, and we realize that some things are still in there, or maybe somebody just did a rollover instead of clicking from the current drop downs, we have just been addressing those as they come up to clean it up. And so our mapping is so much cleaner than it probably was 3-4 years ago. And it's a never ending thing. There will always be something that pops up. But it's really just cleaning up and constantly looking at it and getting all the people in the same room so that we can address those wordings, so that we can have it as simple and clean as possible.
Jamie, I'm going to pick on you next just because I see you and I know in Tennessee, you know, with a changing state vendor. So Tennessee has a state vendor that does all accommodations, and you'll find it interesting, you know, the other state, Teresa and Kelly, I'd love to hear y'all's perspective too from Florida and Arkansas, but working through changing transitions of vendors and implementing, what have you gone through and what do you think the benefit has been of having the test town system to kind of streamline all of it?
So we moved to something called T Impulse a couple of years ago. And at the beginning, we thought it was going to be a clean trade from Ed Plan to T Impulse, and it was not. In fact, it was the gift that kept on giving. And so as we've gotten into the platform and figured out T Impulse, that has really streamlined what the accommodations look like in every building. And when a team goes rogue, Test Hound has been able to help me identify where that's coming from, and then I can contact either the sped lead or the case managers directly and just talk to them about what's allowable and what's not allowable for state testing and have them make those accommodation changes. So we've really been able to use Test Hound to clean up the wording on our 504s, IEPs, and ILPs in order to make sure that it's compliant with our state testing criteria.
That's great. Teresa and Kelly, I'll let Teresa unmuted first, so you can go first.
In Florida, the majority of the school districts actually use a Florida Department of Education software for their 504s and IEPs, and they've streamlined the wording. But based on feedback, you know, we have the larger districts. We have one of the larger districts in the whole country. That feedback has allowed them to go back, restructure the entire accommodation file. So we did one of those wipeouts where we got rid of, you know, the 40,000 plus different accommodations that were essentially the same accommodations, but you'd had little nuances of verbiage. So now they all come in with one section that is the accommodation. And then if they want to personalize it for the student, it comes in as a note. So for us, that's been a huge time saver that we're not having to do as much mapping as before. So just getting that feedback and working with, for us, the vendor being DOE, they did listen and modified how the accommodations are set up and how they export out from their program to allow us to upload into Test Hound. So it's Test Hound has been our savior with accommodations.
Kelly.
So when we first got Test Hound, it was absolutely amazing on pulling in all the accommodations. One thing that we modified our special ed, we use C's, and I don't know where we're at actually on if C's ever is still talking with Test Hound overnight. I need to look into that because there was some issue with that. But we got a new testing vendor last year, Atlas. It's a state-run their own testing system now, and we have two of our three biggest, actually all three of them, accommodations: small group, text to speech, and extended time. Everyone gets text to speech. Everyone can have as much time as they want, and you can make a small group whenever you need to. So our three biggest accommodations are ubiquitously applied to everybody, which is absolutely amazing with this test. So our need for applying accommodations has decreased tremendously, which is fantastic. And those special case needs, you just have to check more individually, but the way the systems all work together is still amazing. And using Test Time to make rosters for everything is just great.
Okay, I am not quite seeing anything else come up, but this might spur some questions. Streamlining processes, okay? And to me, like, that is from administration to administration, right? Because again, gone are the days of you test twice a year. It's nonstop. And we can all say different acronyms, right, that we're using in different states for those tests, but it all looks very much the same. So think administration, and I'm even thinking campus to campus because, you know, our buildings take on sometimes lives of their own. So how do you streamline and you can pick whichever one maybe you have the biggest, thoughts on, but streamlining things for your district processes, administration, also campus to campus.
All right, so I'll say for us, having Test Hound has had such a significant impact for our district, because there are security documents that you have to have that are, our Department of Education required, and then you get the schools modifying them, and they're not necessarily putting everything on there they were supposed to. So once we were able to go over to the Test Hound and use those reports that are exported out of there, it has made everything universal, very streamlined. Everybody knows what is expected on their forms, where it goes. Everything is just lining up. It helps them with their process. If they're doing a testing in a room that has accommodations, they know they can get and print out that room accommodation report. And then there's a place for a signature, which I think is fantastic, because now your test coordinator, your test administrator, yes, can sign that they're receiving this list. So it helps in validating that they can't say they don't know that the kid is allowed this accommodation or not allowed this accommodation, because you're getting an itemized list of accommodations. You're signing off that you're receiving it. It has been very helpful for us streamlining our processes and just helping the school coordinators and the test administrators organize and prepare for upcoming administrations.
Joanna, let's see if you're there.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yay.
Perfect. I'm dialed in with my phone, so apologies. We just moved into new offices this week, so technology is iffy. So piggybacking off of what Teresa said, yes, we do love using all the Test Town reports, because it definitely makes things very uniform. In addition to, the seating charts, the rosters, the room accommodation reports, we do make sure, since we have so many different campuses in our district, we provide, our campus-led trainings and kind of some non-negotiables of things that we want them to use, and to make sure that they also provide to teachers. That way everyone has pretty much the same uniform administration and feel across the district. So that's one of the steps that we do.
Kelly, why don't you go ahead and speak to this, and then maybe you can also frame the question you put in the chat and see what we get.
Okay, speaking to this, I was thinking I like to have consistency. So I have test folders set up for everybody, and make sure we do all of our trainings the same, talk about security, talk about FERPA, talk about, accommodations moving forward, where we're keeping all of our documents, scanning them, keeping them locally. We keep monitoring forms, like who's supposed to test, who's doing makeups, and we try to keep track of all of that stuff for the teachers. So that's one less thing they have to do. The question I asked in the chat box, excuse me, is anyone else having problems when it comes to monitoring testing with the new security features that are going up? And I just went and monitored ACT this morning, and I noticed that a lot of the rooms had that, for lack of better words, anti-see-through window film up on the doors, or black covers. And I know it's for, people coming into the building that shouldn't be in the building, and you have to go on lockdown. But that's really impeding on my job to monitor testing. So I didn't know if you guys were having the same problems, or what you were doing to combat that.
So we do have that same issue in our district, where we have a lot of the anti kind of see-through film that was applied to our door windows over the last couple of years. The only thing that we've been able to do, because safety and security still has certain policies and procedures that they want us to go by, is making sure that hall monitors have that room key, especially if that's not their normal hallway, because that's the other component. A lot of our doors were reset and locked by hallway or by department. So making sure that there's ample master keys available, so the hall monitor can get in just in case, they see something like the help reliever sign posted outside the door, and then also making sure that the administrator or campus desk coordinator as well, that they have that master key situation so they can go in. And it's a little bit noisier, which is unfortunate that you have to unlock a door and open and physically look in. But that's what we say, is just make sure you have that hourly visual walkthrough check, you know, and we just make sure that someone is continuously like physically peeking into those rooms.
I'm gonna piggyback also though and say I'm looking at it from kind of a different angle, and it goes back to the previous question about consistency. I think if we're constantly promoting and doing the right thing, then our monitoring, I'm not going to say it doesn't have to be extreme or it doesn't have to take place. It does, but the expectations are set and they're monitored up to the official state testing days. And it is common practice. I feel like we test so much overall, whether it's unit tests, classroom tests, district assessments, whatever, that if the protocols and the procedures are the same always, then for Texas, STAR testing days or TELPAS testing days are just another day. And we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, and our campus test coordinators are walking the building and kind of like Joanna said, you know, they have a key and they can get into any room that they need to get into. And yeah, it's a distraction. But even that, at this point, I think our kids are used to it because doors are locked all the time, not just on testing days. And so I think it goes back to having those procedures in place and the high expectations that our teachers are following them. I guess, but my district, when I started here, the joke was, I had come from a very small district and now I was joining a big district, and it was extremely autonomous. And they just, everybody in leadership joked, they were like, you're going to really struggle because you're used to saying this is how it is. And everybody here is kind of like, well, on my campus, we do blah, 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 blah. Well, not so much anymore when it comes to testing. Like they know that certain things are the way we're going to do them on test for any testing. And that's just kind of the way it goes, and it works well.
Anybody else have any feedback on that?
I just wanted to go back to the procedural thing. One of the things that we implemented this year that I think is going to be very beneficial over time is the accountability and assessment team put together a testing hub where all of the building coordinators can go to see what's coming next, what they need to do. So there's an Excel document that has step-by-step what they need to do to make it to testing and then through testing with the dates of, you know, this is when paper copies are due, or this is when computer stuff has to be finished. And they can go in and check the box for their school so that at district level, we also know where they are in the process. We also added a color-coded calendar for each level. So there's an elementary color, a middle color, and a high school color that will help keep them on track as well. And they can either do it by calendar or it will go into a list format. So depending on how they like their things organized, they can choose, you know, what best fits them. But it allows us to see where each of the buildings are in their process and are they completing each step that they need to do.
That's awesome. Well, you have a request to share that. So
I will see how I can get that to you.
and I can figure out a way. I'll have a list too of whatever you're willing to share, can share of everyone that attended the webinar. And so we can also push that out with whatever you're comfortable sharing, Jamie. That would be awesome.
It'll have to see. I don't know if it's on lockdown or not. So
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, whatever, like I said, whatever you're capable and willing. And that's what I love about these things. It's just it's different minds getting together to bounce ideas off. And you never know when you're going to hear something really fantastic that you can use to help yourself. So, okay, like I said, the 30 minutes go quick. And so I want to do a kind of a round robin, if it's okay with you. And I'm going to, call out your name, but I want to know, and if we're going to get as many different kind of types as we can, but your biggest practical tip. I want to start with test town specifically, okay, and go kind of around, and then maybe in general, and then depending on the time we have, if we could break that out, DTC, CTC, or maybe you just think of one of each. And so let's just start with your biggest practical tip right now in February, leading into March, for you or your campuses too, with Test Hound. So Nikki, you're up first.
Okay, I think biggest practical tip is just the constant reminders of what Test Hound can do and how to do it. I have, I know Test Hound already has them, but I have little how-to documents with screenshots for all my CTCs for the various tasks that I need them to do regularly. And so when I'm emailing them out or emailing certain things that I need done or their to-do lists, I'm sure to link those how-to documents so that it's, here's what you need to do, here's how you do it, get in there and do it. And if you have any trouble, call. And so to me, just constantly enforcing the need for our campuses to go in there because the product is a cost to our school districts. And so we are trying to streamline processes and be consistent. And so by constantly encouraging our folks to go in and do certain things, then it gets them in there and they are more at ease with the program.
Perfect. Joanna, you're next.
I would say that the one thing I ask our folks to do time and time again is to use the master accommodation report and to start having very meaningful conversations with their teams on making sure that students, one, meet the eligibility, and then that they also are like routinely, independently, effectively using it or deciding now is the time to do an amendment, in which case we'll make that adjustment ahead of time.
Perfect. Kelly.
I encourage them to use Test Town for rosters, making their room rosters, room reports, and making their special groups and all sorts of things like that. I think it's easier in Test Town than any other place to do that.
Thanks. Jamie?
So for us, we are just digging in to Test Town because of the previous state gift that I mentioned. And so we right now, I'm just trying to get my building testing coordinators to realize what a gift Test Hound is now that we're starting to get those reports consistently. So I'm really feeding off of you guys on this one to start. I love the idea of starting to send out little nuggets of, you know, what Test Hound can do for them so that I can build some want within the buildings to use it.
And Teresa.
All right, so right now I am jumping in with my coordinators to get them to do their cleanup with their alerts, with their catching some that haven't pulled in rooms. So when they're going to assign by class period and rooms and they're not seeing them. So we're just doing some maintenance, getting that maintenance done before they start. But our district, they are required to use Test Hound for all of their test security documents. So for us, it just makes it really efficient. So the practical piece is get your alerts all processed, your rooms pulled in, and don't wait to the last minute. Start planning, scheduling, going now.
Okay, well, I just want to open up the mics for all of you. If there's any last parting piece of wisdom that you can share with our attendees and everybody else that will see this soon. Any last parting thing that you can share with our test coordinators as we go into, as Nikki said, our time, right? Time to shine.
I'm going to say just reach out to the other people like us. Reach out to your neighbors, your friends. I mean, if you're new to this, you're new to Test Hound. First of all, I think it was Laura that said it years ago to me. You can't mess anything up in there. Like, I mean, you can't. So get in there, play around, and then call a neighbor when you're stuck or you don't know what to do. And happy testing.
I think just make sure to communicate clearly on, you know, what your expectations are. And if you're at the building level, make sure to set your expectations for your teachers and your proctors so that they understand exactly what they need to do and how important it is for, you know, them to follow the procedures and check things back in and do the counts and all the things. But just communication is key.
Anyone else?
We're a district that's getting monitored by the state. They just do random districts, so we're very fortunate to get selected. So even doing this for as many years as I have, you start analyzing things better. So we got a test interruption plan in place that we'll get to share with the other schools, and we have an incident report. So some of those things that if you don't already have them in place that seem very obvious, you may just want to set up at district level and just make sure that your school coordinators have those, they understand them, and just, if you can, keep them from having stress and anxiety. Know that you're there for them to just walk through things with. Be their cheerleader.
Kelly, I saw you unmute for a second. Would you like to elaborate?
I was just gonna say flexibility. Being flexible and understanding with your test coordinators in the building and the teachers who have a lot placed on them right now.
Yeah, it's a tough time to be in education at the district level, at the building, campus level. So many things happening. If you're on the call and you know me, you know my husband's still currently a high school assistant principal, and so I hear every day about the adventures on campus. And he doesn't do testing, but I know the person that does on his campus too, and it's just. It's a hard time, and so I think everyone is blessed that we do have a community of educators, and especially those that are around testing and within Test Town and within different states. And so I think that's probably one of the favorite parts of my job is just linking people together to help provide resources, not only with our system, but just in general to help make it through all that's happening and sometimes some challenging times. So we went just a little bit over, but not too much. I'm going to share my screen just really quickly, just to remind you that really what we want to do at our core of our company, from me, from Craig, from anyone you speak to within Education Advance, is we want to make your life easier. The majority of us have walked in your shoes. We have lived the life and know how hard it is. And that is truly our core belief, is that we want to make your life easier, not only with Test Town, but with a few other products we offer as well for graduation tracking and staff evaluation and development. So thank you for our panelists so much for your time today. And thank you for those of you that attended. We do record these so that we can send them out. And so if that's something that you would like to have to go back and listen, and Jamie, we did give you just a touch of homework. If you're comfortable with looking at how to maybe bring some of that together, you can get it to me and I can make sure that it is shared out in the way that is best appropriate. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday, and know tomorrow is Wednesday already and you're halfway through your week. Thank you again for your time, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Teresa.
You're welcome.
Thanks for joining us. If you want to learn more about college and career readiness, graduation tracking, teacher growth, assessment coordination, be sure to subscribe to our newsletter. Until next time.